still going strong over there. There's a bunch of cars.
All right, we should be live. Go back, Gail. Oh, she's out there? Huh? It's Gail.
It's 7 o'clock. All right, well, it's 7 o'clock, so we'll call this meeting to order. You'd stand with us. Don, would you lead us in a word of prayer?
Yes.
Please remain standing for the pledge.
I would pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for many opportunities of life you give us, Lord. So many chances you give to help other people, Lord. That's what that our religion is all about, helping one another. And Lord, thank you for many blessings of life you give us. Most of all, thank you for Jesus Christ, our true Lord and Savior, that takes away the sin of the world. If we'll just accept and believe and confess and repent of our sins, we too can be saved. Lord, we have so many issues to be dealt with today. Help us, Lord, to always make the right decision, the true decision, the godly decision. Help all our decisions to be fair and equal to each and every one. Lord, in the blessed name of Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the March 26th special call, March 30th joint, and the April 6th regular meeting. You have these in your package. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion to hear a second.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Is there any additions, corrections? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Grayhouse,
All right.
Councilmember Middlebrooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker,
Yes.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
Councilmember Head.
Yes.
Next item is the adoption of the agenda. We have any additions and corrections?
If it pleases the council, I'd like one addition, and that will be a presentation from Ms. Pam Helton with the Georgia Municipal Association. And if it pleases the council, I'm going to have that as a floating agenda item depending upon the arrival of our to-be-honored guest.
Motion to approve changes as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions, additions? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Grayhouse,
All right.
Councilmember Middlebrooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker,
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves,
Yes.
Councilmember Head.
Yes.
All right.
At this time, Mayor, I would like to introduce Ms. Helton with the Georgia Municipal Association.
So, it's been a long time, hasn't it, Gail?
Oh, yes.
I represent the Georgia Municipal Association, and for those of you who do not know, Georgia Municipal Association is the association for Georgia cities. And we actually represent all 537 cities in the state of Georgia. So the board of directors several years ago decided that they wanted to in some way honor those elected officials or city managers or city clerks or city attorneys who have given their life to public service. And anyone that had 35 years of service retiring from the city would be given the Lifetime Service Award. So Ms. Gail, you meet those qualifications. So if you'll come forward, I will present to you. Your city was nominated you for the Lifetime Service Award. And so GMA would like to present this to you for your, this is your lifetime, really. 42 years is half a lifetime just about. So
Thank you.
we appreciate all the service that you have done for public service, citizens, the state of Georgia. And I understand you're the glue that holds it all together, so I don't know what they're doing. But congratulations. congratulations, and just know that, if you wanna work part-time for anybody, let me know, because I got interim list of clerks that I send around the state when somebody needs them.
I think my friend Shimon is,
Calling you more.
Yes, I'll get a picture real quick. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Congratulations.
Well deserved.
I wasn't expecting that.
I'll let you put it in there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next on the agenda is the introduction of new police officers.
All right. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to come before you. Most of these officers, we've had a lot going on over the last few months, and we've brought in several new people. All these guys have already been sworn in, so we're not swearing in anyone tonight, reading that long oath. But I did want to bring them for you just for a minute and introduce several of the officers that we've hired in the department in the last few months, so you know who we got when you see them out and about. So I'm going to start with experience and work my way down to from the ones with the most experience to the least, starting out, okay? So we're going to start out with Mr. Freddie Oates. Corporal Oates was hired in November of this past year, or no, I'm sorry, was it December? It was in December. December. He came in December with us, and Corporal Oates, he was hired as a corporal. We posted a corporal position at that time, and Freddie more than qualified for that. He has 20 years service as a police officer, and he worked a majority of that career with Barnesville PD. He also worked for Gordon State College PD, and he worked for Lamar County SO for brief stints with both of them. Freddie is also a field training officer, and he stepped right into it and was, as soon as he finished his little bit of training with us, he is supervising a shift. He is an interim shift supervisor and running our D shift for us and doing a really good job. And Freddie also brings us a ton of traffic enforcement experience. He does a lot of DUI stuff, has a lot of certifications in field sobriety in those areas. Does a really good job for us. So we're real happy to have Freddie with us and his years of experience. Second, we have Sergeant Drew Jackson. Drew, about a month or so ago, a couple months ago, we ended up having a couple sergeant spots come vacant, and we were able to post a sergeant spot, and we were able to pick up Sergeant Drew Jackson. Drew has 19 years experience in law enforcement, and Drew was hired in March of this year. He's been with us for just maybe 2 months now. Drew, just a little bit about Drew. He started his police career in Thomaston. He actually went to the police academy in 2002 and worked here for about 2 years, and then he got a job working in Griffin. Drew and I actually worked together in Griffin for about 12, 13 years in Griffin. During his time in Griffin, Drew was assigned to the DEA task force in Atlanta. He did some time up there. He worked about 6 years in narcotics with the police department. He worked several years in criminal investigations, and he worked several years in the patrol division as an officer and as a supervisor in the patrol division. So Drew also has a great deal of experience. He also has a bachelor's degree and multiple certifications. So Freddie and Drew have brought us a lot of experience and a lot of years to the department that we really needed. So we're very grateful for
So
that.
who is Mr. Drew?
Drew's right here. All right, our next officer is Corporal Marquivas Johnson. Mr. Johnson also joins us from another officer who worked in Griffin PD. He was hired also in March of this year. Has been with us for a couple months now, and he has about 4 years experience, a little over 4 years. He was actually, when I worked in Griffin in Spalding County, he was a dispatcher. He was a heck of a dispatcher too. He was really good. But shortly after I left Griffin, Griffin PD hired him, and he got certified, and he's been working as an officer up there. Mark also was part of the CAGE unit in Griffin, which is a gang unit. So he has some specialized training and did some special unit stuff up there in Griffin. So he brings us some good experience. And what I mean tell is he's got like a mind like an elephant, like he remembers names and faces. So we hope to put that to test. So he's doing a real good job. And he also is going to be thrown into fire very soon. And he's probably going to be taking over as an interim shift supervisor as well on one of our shifts. Next, we have Justin Calver. Justin Calver is also an experienced officer. Justin has about 3 years experience, and he was certified and worked for Manchester PD. We were able to convince him to come over to Thomaston. He spent his career there so far and just joined us. He also spent some time in the U.S. Army. He's a veteran. And he also worked, I believe he worked as a jailer in Spalding County for a short period as well. So Justin was also hired in March of this year also, and is just now wrapping up all his legal training. And so all of these guys are working and on the street and you know, adding to our numbers and being beneficial to us. And then last but not least, we have Patrolman David McCoy. And David McCoy is our rookie. We hired David in December of 2020, and he went to the police academy. We hired him as a non-certified. David did spend 8 years in the U.S. Army and also as an Army veteran. But we sent him to the academy, and he did very well, breezed right through it. And he has just gotten out, and he graduated in March from the academy, and he is in his FTO training program now, which he should complete in about another month or so. But David is doing a great job for us so far. So he doesn't have a lot of years experience, but he brings a lot of maturity with him and his background with the military and so forth, and we're very pleased to have him as well. So these are our newest officers that we have joined the force, and we just wanted to bring them here tonight and introduce them to you all and let you know who we got.
Thank you. We do appreciate y'all and the service y'all do provide for us, the city, Thomaston, the citizens, and know that we're always here for y'all, and we really appreciate and understand what y'all are going through, and thank you for serving for us.
And I don't know if most of you or if any of you have seen our Facebook post about the little incident, traffic stop we had today. Mr. Johnson was one of those officers, and we've got over, I think, up to 140,000 views on that
Good.
post. It's a very positive thing, and really good job that
Mike,
you
do
did.
all of y'all know what he's referring to?
You want to
You might
briefly,
you might
some
just
of
do a
them I don't
brief
think
story
on
about
Facebook.
Just real brief, we did a traffic stop. We received a complaint. Mark, you tell me if I'm wrong, but a complaint came in about a vehicle with loud music, and they had a description. They found the vehicle. The vehicle was driven by a black male, loud music. They ran the tag, and the tag came back. The subject was wanted, had a warrant for his arrest, and was flagged in in our CAD system as caution. It comes up 10-0, use 10-0, which means use caution. This is a dangerous subject. And I think he had prior weapon charges and things like that. So we take it very seriously when that comes up on the computer system. You're dealing with somebody, or the potential of dealing with someone very dangerous. So of course they approached the car. They handled it very professionally. They made contact with the driver, identified him, asked him out of the car, which would be normal procedure. The subject, his name was Mr. Williams, John Williams. He was very compliant. He complied with all their commands. Long story short, the warrant turned out to be not valid. It was from another state, and it was an old traffic charge, like 8 years old, that should have been removed from the system and wasn't. And his reason for his flag is Mr. Williams is now 40 years old, I believe. And back in his teenage years in 20, he was basically a hustler and dealt drugs and did all kinds of stuff and had been in all kinds of trouble. He now owns his own business, does cell tower work, and is doing very well. Mr. Williams was so impressed on how our officers treated him in that traffic stop, and knew when they stopped him that they were going to get that flag notice because he's dealt with it before. And he's also expressed to me that he has not been treated so kindly by other officers. He said he was overwhelmed on how kind they were to him and how respectful they were to him while doing their job and being safe and handling it the way they needed to. He ended up calling me after the stop, sent me a private message on Facebook, and then called me and told me, you know, you've got two officers, they were respectful, professional, did their job, but treated me like a human being. He said, heck, I thought we were friends. and we were, having conversation, and just went on how great it was, and in light of everything going on in the nation right now, and with relations between police, he just wanted and thought it was important that I know that my officers were doing it right. He said they were really doing it right. We got him to come up to the PD. He's like, if there's anything I ever do for you, I said, you can do something for me. And he came up and we met with the officers again, and he thanked them, because he also said that, they restored his faith in law enforcement, that some of them can, that's most of us, because most of law enforcement in this country do what they're supposed to do all the time. Anyways, he was very proud. He came up and took some pictures with the officers, and we posted the story and their picture together on Facebook, and it has blown up. I mean, it has literally blown up. And it's really something that we need right now. With everything that's going on, it's the kind of stuff, and it's the kind of stuff that we teach and we preach at Thomaston PD, respect and professionalism. I tell them all the time, it doesn't matter who they are, where they come from, what's going on, everyone we deal with is a human being. And if we treat people like human beings and we respect them, they tend to respect us back. How did he treat you guys? He listened to commands, he respected them and gave it right back, and when they did that, it was mutual and everything worked out beautifully. So, and he did get a warning on his loud music. But it did work out good, and we're very proud of them and all the job they do. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
thank y'all.
All right, next item on the agenda, public hearing, annexation of 2 acres, Upton County Farm Bureau Incorporated, Highway 19 North, C2 zoning.
You nailed it, Mayor. You should have a copy of the annexation application attached with your packet. You should also have the subsequent ordinances required for annexing the property in. And we have a Mr. Sanders Chapman here representing the Farm Bureau property to be annexed for a Verizon store. We have Mr. Charles Gilbert here with McElroy representing the other property to be annexed in for a hotel to be built. So, Mayor, at this time I ask that the public hearing be called open, and to ask if there's anyone who would like to speak, specifically the gentleman we have here representing the property tonight.
All right. So does anyone here like to speak?
Hearing no comments, Mayor, unless the council has specific questions regarding the annexation applications or ordinances, I ask that we close the public hearing so that we can take action.
Well, so let me just ask, so it's going to be a Verizon on the south side?
You want to speak to that, Mr.
Yeah, so we're relocating the current Verizon store over next to the Chick-fil-A. We're building it for the franchisee who owns the current building. It's, so same owner, same business, just relocating.
But just a freestanding building that'll be a Verizon?
That's correct, yes.
Any other? Any other comments?
Well, I'll ask one more comment. So when do you think it'll be started and finished with the annex?
I'm budgeting about 6 months after we receive permits. Based on my meetings today, that seems like it'll happen relatively quickly. But material delays are also a factor. But hopefully we can get that done in 6 months.
We had a staff meeting with Mr. Chapman earlier. He brought copies of his plans. We had, utilities, building inspection, engineering present. So I think we've got a pretty good jump start on the process.
Good, thank you.
This has gone through zoning.
Yep, everything's been advertised. The proper channels have been met. This is the final leg.
There's no other questions or comments. Need a motion to come out of the public hearing portion. And a motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Comments? Call for a vote to come out of public hearing.
Councilmember Greathouse.
All right.
Councilmember Middlebrooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Yes.
Councilmember Head.
Yes.
All right, now you need approval for.
Yep, Mayor, with regards to the 2 acres, formerly the Upton County Farm Bureau, they're requesting a C2 zone. for that 2 acres. And with regards to Mr. McElroy LLC, specifically for the 2.823 acres with the yellow building, that is a C2C zone. The last C stands for conditional, and that is regarding the billboard that is on the site. Council may be aware that in the city, per our zoning ordinance, we only allow billboards in industrial zones. I believe this is maybe M1. This will be a C2, so the condition will be to allow as a non-conforming use for the current billboard. They're not asking to build one, they're just asking as a condition of annexation that be left and allowed as a condition. So with that in mind, staff's recommendation with regards to the ordinance is to authorize the execution so that these properties be annexed into the city.
You've heard those recommendations. We do.
I had a comment. On that, it says annexation of 2.823 acres. I believe ours is actually the 2.00 acres. I don't know if you know your size or not. Ours is 2 even.
They must be flipped on the agenda.
Where are you reading from?
I'm reading from the agenda. I'll pull the, see if I got the ordinances here.
McElroy's.
Yeah,
So
they're
they're
built
flipped.
too.
So the McElroy LLC is 2.0, and then the Verizon. Okay. I got mixed up. Sorry.
All right.
We're making a motion on one at a time.
That'd be
Or
fine.
Which one we're going to take, the McElroy first?
McElroy LLC for the 2 acres, which is a C2C zone.
Make a motion to approve.
Have a motion. Do I hear a second?
So let me just ask a quick question. So what it's doing is annexing it, but also allowing for that billboard to be, and we're talking about that electronic billboard?
Right, and as part of the annexation, we have to issue a zoning classification in this specific, what they want to do is a C2 zone. The extra C is the condition which would allow the billboard to remain.
This is the same situation you had with the Chick-fil-A property. There was a billboard on that property. There's a billboard already on that, on McElroy's property. And when they bought that property, they, the lease to billboard was assigned to McElroy. So they took it with the billboard, just like they did with the Chick-fil-A property.
We have a motion. Jeff, you second? I did. We got a motion and a second. Any further questions, comments for the McElroy property? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse.
Aye.
Councilmember Middlebrooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Yes.
Councilmember Head.
Yes.
So now is for the annexation 2.823 for the Upton
Correct.
Farm Bureau. Do I hear a motion for that?
Make a motion.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse.
Aye.
Councilmember Middlebrooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Yes.
Councilmember Head.
Yes.
All right. That's done, Bill. So the next item is public comment and announcements. We didn't have anyone sign up. Nobody, after all that time, nobody wanted to. Come on, Gary. You could have signed up and said something for us.
Maybe next time.
You came by and talked to you.
All right, next item is the city attorney's report.
The only thing that I really have to report on is the Be a Goodrich donation of the .16 acre. Talked to their attorney today, and they need to get their title report prepared, and they're going to share that with me, and an internal approval so that they can finish up the donation. And some idea of when that would be completed would be end of May, 1st of June. So we're just waiting on them for that transaction.
So they donated it to the city?
Yeah.
They did.
They don't want to give it to us.
Which we've been using for
Yeah, it's almost like a little cut-through road to the alley right there, I believe is in use.
And that's already been voted on,
Yeah.
correct? That's it.
All right. Deputy City Clerk's report.
Just a little update, everything's still going well. Trying to get 42 years of knowledge in a few weeks. It's a bit overwhelming, but
I would say you're off to a good start, though.
thank you. I'm honored for the
Yeah.
opportunity. I know I have large shoes to fill, so
Doing a great job.
Thank you for stepping up.
You got anything to add to that? Girl? Anything you want to add? Your final comments on the agenda?
I want to thank everybody for their support and confidence in me and all the years and working with Russell, and for the beautiful retirement reception and everything. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was good. Anything from the city engineer's report?
Not at this time, Mayor.
Move to the city manager's report.
First item for council's consideration is authorization to execute an agreement between Flock Group Incorporated and the City of Thomaston. This is specifically for 10 Flock safety cameras, which are the equivalent of the tag readers that we currently have on our cars that work through GCIC. We brought this to council at a previous meeting, and the recommendation at that time was to bring the matter back before council once the city attorney had opportunity to review the contract and present back with any issues that she may have. So pending those issues, staff's recommendation is to authorize the execution, pending legal confirmation if there's any outstanding legal issues that need to be addressed in the agreement. And as a reminder to City Council, as discussed at the previous meeting, funding for the project will be drawn from the Red Speed funds, and the total value of the 10 cameras is $27,500. Mike, do you have anything you wanted to add?
I would like for the chief to, I guess, go back a little bit and tell me a little bit again about what the cameras are and.
Sure. The Flock cameras, like Russell said, we currently have 3 vehicles that have what we call LPRs. They're tag readers that are they're mounted on the patrol cars. And so as those vehicles ride around, every vehicle that passes those cars, it reads the tag information. And then it alerts the officer if it's someone with a warrant, or if it's expired, or no registration, or no insurance, anything, a stolen vehicle, anything like that. What Flock is the exact same cameras that we currently run. They're just mounted on a pole throughout the city. We're placing them at entry points into the city. As vehicles enter the city, it would read the tag and it would alert the on-duty officers to it's a stolen car, warrants, no insurance, anything like that. This is not like Red Speed. This is not auto enforcement. This is not anyone getting tickets in the mail or anything like that. If an alert is sent out from a tag that's red, it would actually have, the car would actually have to be located and stopped by an officer. So instead of those 3 cameras that we currently have only working 12 hours when that officer's on duty, these cameras will work 24/7 and it'll alert all the officers. And how it works is the officers will log, when they come on duty, they log into the system, and they'll have a little Dropbox window in their CAD, the computers in their car. And if one of those cameras is alerted, it'll send an alert to every police car on duty. And it'll pop up a box and saying camera 4 just alerted for a stolen vehicle. And then it'll give the description of the vehicle. And then at that point, they can start proceeding to that area and attempt to locate the vehicle. So that's basically how they work.
And you said they had 10 entry points.
Yes, we have, we did a mapping with Flock, and 36 on both ends, 74 on both ends, 19 north and south on both ends. I think Triangle Mill Road coming into the city. It's basically every entry points into the city, and then there was 2 internal ones that we were going to mount on 19 in and around all the shopping centers, because we have so many shoplifting cases and so forth that it would be very beneficial with that situation to have some internal on 19. And that would account for the 10. And then we would also integrate at no cost the 2 cameras that are already part of the RedSpeed system would be integrated into that system. So we'd actually have 12 cameras that work that way.
So these cameras read tags?
Yes, ma'am. They read a tag. When it comes by, it reads the tag that's coming in. It captures an image of the tag in the vehicle as they come in. And a quick example, we talked about several different cases, but just one particular, when the deputy was shot in Lamar County a year or so ago, that subject was tracked and found by flock cameras. He hit on about, once you have a flock system, we will be able to access any other agency who has flock systems. Like Pike County next to us has 16 flock cameras. So if somebody commits a crime in our city and they leave and hit one of our cameras, we would know if they went to Pike because they would start hitting on their cameras. The Lamar County deputy that was shot, that car, I think it was something like 11 different flock cameras through multiple jurisdictions, and they arrested him, I think in Alabama or Mississippi, like within 48 hours of the incident, because they tracked him and they had tag information that hit on those cameras. And there's tons of stories. I could tell you repeated stories of crimes that were solved and things that were with those camera systems.
So we need a motion for the approval of this authorization. We got a motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse.
Aye.
Councilmember Middlebrooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Yes.
Councilmember Head.
Yes.
Next item for council's consideration is approval on authorization to enter into an agreement with the Georgia Environmental Protection Division regarding a corrective action plan which will enable the city to enter the Georgia Underground Storage Tank Trust Fund specifically for facility ID 1001438. You should have a copy of the agreement headed J2 in your packet. What this is, a little bit of background. Out there at the old municipal building, there was a gas tank that was ID to the EPD for the city police department. There was also a tank that was ID to the sheriff's department, I believe, when the old jail was out there. The city ID, we have a corrective action agreement with the state. However, there's never been an agreement with regards to the other facility, which was tied to the county. When the city took ownership of the property, we owned the liability for the monitoring of those wells too. So what the state has asked to do is to combine those 2 facilities into one facility ID. As such, we have to enter this corrective action agreement with the Georgia EPD. What this does, it allows us to get our expenditures reimbursed by the state under this trust. The only provision in here is that there's a $10,000 deductible before you can get into the fund. We have already expended in excess of $10,000 for monitoring, and we have a subsequent agreement on the agenda for later on. I believe it's the next item for some more work we have to do. So the way it works under this agreement, we pay a $20,000 bill for monitoring and reporting to the EPD for these old gas tanks. They would in turn cut us a check for $10,000, whereas $10,000 was the deductible. I think that we've already satisfied that, so I anticipate for the cost to be fully reimbursable. But this corrective action plan with the EPD is on an old issue that was known about. We've been currently monitoring it and submitting reports to the EPD. They're just requesting that the facility IDs be combined into one for simplicity's sake. And staff's recommendation is to authorize the mayor to execute and enter the corrective action agreement with the EPD so that we can begin submitting expenditures to be reimbursed under the Gus Trust.
So Russell, if since we've hopefully met that $10,000 deductible, does that mean that any future work done on this should be fully reimbursed?
There's some exclusions, and I think it is similar to what we submit for Zorn Street, right? As part of our joint project with the county, a lot of that's reimbursable. So if we spend 80 grand, I think we get like 70 grand back every year. So it's not 100%. They have eligibility criteria for what's reimbursed, but we get the lion's share of the money back. And there's monitoring wells all over that site out there. Some are tied to the old facility ID, some are tied to the county facility ID. This just consolidates those. So staff's recommendation is to authorize.
You've heard staff's recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
So order.
I hear second.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse.
All right.
Councilmember Middlebrooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Yes.
Councilmember Head.
Yes.
The next item for council's consideration is the authorization of a scope of work with Advanced Environmental Management Incorporated to complete monitoring tasks as requested by the EPD. This goes hand in hand with the item that you just approved. You should have a copy of the scope of work headed J3. For the monitoring events, it will ultimately be put into a report submitted to the EPD. The scope value for this work is $22,325. And like we talked about before, lion's share of that will be reimbursable to the city under the trust. Advanced Environmental is the same group that we're currently using for monitoring on the site, and we're also currently using them for monitoring at the landfill.
So I guess, is this something that we'd have to do regardless if it's reimbursable or not?
Yes.
Right. I'll make a motion.
Sorry.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse.
All right.
Councilmember Middlebrooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Yes.
Councilmember Head.
Yes.
The next item for council's consideration is the authorization to enter into an agreement or a common use agreement with Georgia Power Company. You should have a copy of the agreement headed J4 with your packet. It's odd this doesn't already exist. I believe we already have a common use agreement with the EMC. This is where there are telephone poles throughout the city where the assets are co-located, meaning Georgia Power might be on the top, the city of Thomaston will be on the bottom. Some of those poles are owned by Georgia Power, and we're on their poles, and some of the poles are owned by the city of Thomaston, and Georgia Power is on our pole. This is a reciprocal agreement that specifies, how we communicate with each other, how we ID those assets, and how work is conducted on them to relocate or to modify. Staff's recommendation is to authorize the city to enter into this agreement pending legal confirmation. The city attorney has reached out to Georgia Power's legal counsel. She had a couple of tweaks, maybe some addition. Did you ever hear back from them?
I did. I talked to them today as well as with Locke. Both were really receptive of the changes and revisions that I had made. So I don't anticipate there being an issue. This is an old, very old template from what I understand that Georgia Power's used for years and years and years, even prior to some revision of tort law. And so one of my questions went to that specific item in this contract, and the attorney agreed that we needed to tweak that it's really not current law. So we're going to try to do that, and there were just some other things that I pointed out to her that I wanted changed or revised a little bit, and she seemed very receptive, so I don't anticipate there being a problem. She's going to get back with me either tomorrow or the next day with the revised agreement.
And from Georgia Power's standpoint, this is just cleaning stuff up. I think a lot of the old agreements are either missing or non-existent, and they have requested this. This came up when we were looking at raising the line out there by the new fire station so that we could have appropriate ingress egress with our fire truck exiting. So staff's recommendation is to authorize pending final legal confirmation.
One thing I will point out is this contract is for a 5-year term, and I talked to her about that. I told her we can only enter into a year at a time, and so she understands that. That's one change on this contract that she agreed to.
So why is it when you, particularly if you brought up the EMC and our agreement with them on coexisting, you know, if you go out 74 going out towards EMC, you'll notice there's a pole and there's another pole right next to it, and it just looks terrible. You know, how does that happen? I mean, why would they do another pole immediately right next? I don't know if you ever, somebody had to point it out to me and ask me about it.
A lot of it has to do with the co-location of the telecommunications under the pole attachment agreements, which ECG monitors for us, that the telecoms have a certain amount of time to exit the pole after we've already installed a new one. A lot of times they lag, and it's kind of a pain to get them off of the physical asset.
I mean, it seems like it's been there for at least the past 10 years. And it just looks terrible. I wish
Where's it at? We can check.
Just go out
By
74,
EMC.
heading out towards Macon, and from when you exit downtown, out 74, you know, all the way to Ernie's, and probably beyond it. I just ran that stretch. It just looks
We'll check
horrible.
it out.
Yeah.
In the absence of a good excuse for its existence,
No,
we can take care of it.
Like I said, you won't really notice it unless you're looking for it, but once you see it, you can just kind of look down 74 and you can just see them. I mean, they're right next to each other. It's weird.
We'll check it out.
Russell, I know there's been some talk about broadband ready, and that would be precluded from this contract, per Georgia Power.
Right, and the ordinance that I think the modification I sent you excluded those as well.
But they were on board with that as well.
What does that mean?
The county and the IDA have requested that we enter into a broadband ready ordinance in anticipation of, rural broadband becoming a reality if funding so becomes available. And part of that ordinance basically gave carte blanche access to city right-of-ways, there were some provisions in there that if there were certain state or federal permits already granted, that it would preempt the local charge to be in the right-of-way. Our concern was traditional access to right-of-way. You think of roads and ditches. However, we own a utility and we own poles. We have contracts with ECG. And we also have contracts with other providers who want to co-locate on our poles. We didn't want to circumvent the contracts that we already had for those physical assets on our poles. We were willing to grant them access to come into compliance with the broadband ready designation, but we didn't want to allow them free access to our utility poles. And I'm understanding Georgia Power don't want that either.
So we heard the recommendation. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse?
All right.
Councilmember Middlebrooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker?
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves?
Yes.
Councilmember Head?
Yes.
The next item for council's consideration is discussion and potential approval of the reissuance of a moratorium. You should have a copy of the new resolution, but prior to, I have just general reading. The moratorium is specific to the development of convenience stores, tattoo parlors, piercing studios, thrift stores, vape shops, tobacco shops, dollar stores, car wash facilities, pawn shops, used car lots, self-service storage facilities, and package stores. Then it goes further on, specific to the downtown development authority district, which is geographically separate from the city proper. The moratorium relates to tattoo parlors, piercing studios, thrift stores, vape shops, tobacco shops, dollar stores, car wash facilities, pawn shops, used car lots, self-serve storage facilities, and package stores. And those designations or preemptions only apply to the DDA. It prohibits the issuance of permits regarding those facilities, and as declared, when we originally issued the moratorium, it was to redraft our zoning ordinance. The current The city is currently under contract with Mr. Bill Johnson, who is completed with our sign ordinance, but because the sign ordinance falls up under the zoning ordinance, we wanted to adopt them in unison. He's well into the drafting of our new zoning ordinance that hopefully we can present to council, in the coming months. And the extension of the moratorium would allow for that zoning to be completed prior to letting it expire, so that all of our zoning laws will be up to date to 2021 standards. So I think the purpose for today, the current moratorium expires on the 3rd of May. And seeing as I don't think we have a meeting before that, if council wanted to reissue without there being a lapse, that it would have to be done at today's meeting or at a called meeting prior to the 3rd.
Russell, if I remember, particularly with self-serve storage, when we did Allen, we gave the rezone approval to Allen Harris. Thank you. I remember pretty plainly that we were all okay, and actually I believe we're in agreement and approved it to allow him to add on within the current property, assuming it was of like structure, it was a like building material. And then I think the reason, but I think right after that, there's something that coincided with the moratorium, so he didn't pull the permit before the moratorium, so therefore it would be in conflict with one another, the permit versus the moratorium.
Correct.
Is that how that went down?
My understanding that was a C2 conditional zone, and the condition was that he could have the self-storage provided that it was interior, and that he could make additions to that facility if they were attached thereto and
within
built, and built with likewise construction materials, et cetera, et cetera.
And obviously recognizing all setbacks and parameters and things like that.
So my understanding is that if we were to reissue the moratorium, we'd be in the same boat, that, the moratorium would preempt the condition of the zone because of the expiration of the permit. The moratorium specifically excludes or disallows city staff from issuing permits. And I guess if the question was as to whether or not we could allow Mr. Harris to construct that as a set aside under the reissuance of the moratorium, with the understanding that it was the intent of the council prior to the issuance of the initial moratorium for that work to take place, what would be our legal standing?
Was it a plan that was discussed back when the annexation was done, that this would be the development of that property?
Yes.
Was discussed?
That was a conditional zoning, that it had to be interior, and it had to be of like architectural controls, had to be attached. And
so I believe the ordinance allowed him to expand the footprint,
yes,
but there was a condition in the expansion that it had to be tied to. It couldn't be a separate structure, and it had to be consistent architecture.
Subsection O of this moratorium specifically says that it does not have an effect upon approvals or permits previously issued or as to development of plans previously approved by the city. It goes on to say it shall not affect the issuance of permits or site plan reviews that have received preliminary or final approval by the city. So
Plans were never submitted, and the permit for that particular expansion was never granted. However, in the order for the conditional zone, it was an allowed use as a condition. The permit just never got pulled.
Well, I guess that was my question. Was it approved at that time? It just never was developed, or
we approved. I feel like we approved it. In my opinion, we approved it conditionally. During that meeting that we allowed it.
Conceptually, not formally.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Like city staff never received plans for the expansion, and we never issued a permit. But I think conceptually, the city council in their conditional approval of the zoning anticipated that that was the case, was gonna happen. Permit just, the plans never got
I think he
submitted.
got delayed doing whatever, when he bought it and was redoing the inside to make it interior. I just, just don't think the timing lined up, and, this hit us when we did the first moratorium. But I think it was our intent to allow it, but he never pulled a permit.
So I guess the question before council would be, if it was the intent of the conditional zone to allow it, it would also have been allowed in any other zoning district where it was allowed prior to the moratorium. So how could you allow it as a conditional zone but not in a traditional zoning where it would have been allowed otherwise? I think that's where I'm having trouble.
And my question was whether or not that was his plan the whole time, and that you accepted it as the plan, it was just gonna be in the future that it would be done.
I mean, and I won't speak for the council, but I think it was clearly understood that he could expand it under certain conditions.
Yeah.
But then somebody else could argue, well, I have land that's zoned for that. Why would you let him out of a moratorium where my property's zoned the same way? It's an allowable use, and that's just, I don't understand legally how that works.
Without me being here,
Right.
that's why I kind of was trying to get an idea of what, if he came to you and said, this is my plan, and you all agree, okay, we're okay with that, and it just he didn't finish it up yet, but it was always approved for that, like, there was a final approval that you guys were okay.
I couldn't put my hands on the exact minutes, because it was some time ago.
It's
But-
in the ordinance.
Yeah, it's in the ordinance, but like what Ryan is relating to, couldn't we go back and look at the minutes and see? But I do think we sort of approved it subject to the plans coming in and going by what,
Just to pull the permit, you obviously have to bring the plans and everything else, and then at that point in time, we were assuming it was the project that kind of kicked it off was what he said it was, and we had no reason to believe that it wasn't, and it actually was. It was very nice. There was a comfort level there, knowing that he was in the midst of doing the first phase, if you will.
Should that just be something that dig in and you go back and look at the minutes and look at what we approved and look at the ordinance? Or is that something we got to approve tonight?
Well, the only thing would be that if you don't want it to lapse, we would need a call meeting prior to the 3rd, which we can do. That's no problem. If y'all would like additional time, we can review it and come back and have a more solid recommendation based on that.
Does everybody remember that conversation, Darren? I think that both the sellers of the property were there, and then Mr. Harris was there.
Would you find out by Friday before we have our next meeting?
Now, this coming Friday? Absolutely.
Because we have our meeting.
If Gail's still
We have
here.
our call meeting Friday.
Just teasing.
A call meeting? You mean, are you talking about calling a meeting for Friday?
No, for the hearings.
We'll be together anyway, but I guess you had to call something special for that. But
We just have to advertise
You
it.
have to
If you're-
advertise that
if
on
you're
the agenda.
convening, we could do it.
We
you know,
take it
as-
on within 72
Doing
hours.
an agenda item. In addition to the agenda.
since we're gonna meet anyway.
Yeah, we could do that.
Okay.
Do we need that in the form of a motion to do that, or?
I think we would need to formally call a meeting, and then we'd just table item 5.
Okay.
I have the ordinance, I think, but I would need to look at the minutes. The ordinance it doesn't have all the discussion in it, obviously, so I need the minutes.
He wanted to add on, but the zoning commission made it clear they wanted it the same as what's already there. 'Cause they didn't want the little units, the metal units, they wanted it to be an attractive building. Because there were already concerns about what the usage was.
No, but I think that was prior to him actually doing it now, you know, because they didn't know what it was gonna look like at that point, to your point.
Motion to a table or just?
Yeah.
We can see all.
The next item for council's consideration is the discussion and approval of concept for the Art Memorial at Greatest Generation Memorial Park. You should have a copy of an attachment headed J6. And just so that you can wrap your head around, I'm going to give you a visual. Can everybody kind of find this little page right here in your packet? The one with a little... All right, so the city contracted with WLA Studio to design a memorial for Greatest Generation Park. They came in, they met with the park committee, came back with kind of a terraced approach to the memorial where you had a hilltop area and then it had a terraced area and then transitioned into a lower area. The construction estimate for the total project came in at, I believe, $500 and some odd $1,000, which $512,000, which was higher than the budgeted funds for the project. If you remember back, we were approached by representatives from the Community Enterprise group. The city has held, I believe, $214,000 in that account for a mutually agreed upon project. It was agreed that the memorial would be such a project, so we hired WLA Studios to go out and design it. They came back with a recommendation, which is a subset of the $500,000 project, and it is on the page. It's not numbered, but the total for the contract is, or the construction estimate is $199,975.25, which includes a construction budget of $151,190. There's a 10% contingency in there, and they've also included a 15% design fee. We're not under contract for design with WLA. The only contract we had was for conceptual work. So if council so chooses to approve this concept, my recommendation would be to authorize staff or the mayor to enter into a scope for the design and prep of the bid documents necessary to put the project out for bid. If you agree with the concept, my understanding is the hilltop area is going to be around the Blue Star Memorial up near the water tank in Silvertown, and various improvement grading, I think some contextual markers, and some benches. Yep, JD kind of has the zone laid out. We also have some representatives here from the Greatest Generation Park Committee. So if it pleases the council, I would ask Mr. Self or Mr. Head to kind of give their understanding of this potential scope before council's asked to approve the scope. You have anything here?
Okay, I'll be glad to do this. I went to all of the meetings, and these people were very thorough, and they understood our problem about the funding. So they worked. I know that sounds kind of funny because when Russell mentioned the $214,000, that estimated cost was $199,925 and some odd cents. But anyhow, they understood that. So we discussed then what to do to get this project going, because we have a Greatest Generation Memorial Park with no memorial. And you know, we've had it for a long time, so we have a great name, but we don't have a memorial. So we did the best we could do with the ideas that they come up with to put something out there, and that was my real idea, was to get something out there that we could call our memorial. And we worked really hard with these and discussed it back and forth. A lot of times I didn't agree, a lot of times I don't agree with a whole lot. But my whole idea is to get something out there on the ground within our budget. Now, this hilltop, or the top part of this, the top third, will actually do what I want it to do. It will put something out there that we can look at, and if you see some of the things, it's hard for me to discuss them because you know I don't know what it shows it in that report. But it will be some physical items that you can actually bump into if you have to. It's not something that you got to think about. You can bump into it. It will be some documentation, some dialogue, some things that when somebody walks by, well, what's that? They can read something about what's out there. And that's really what the best we could do with the constriction of the money. And of course, that was the one thing that we were lucky, I felt like lucky, that Community Enterprises agreed to use their part of the money that's in their checking account or whatever that the city has, to use that for the memorial. And, you know, I'm just, every time we met, I just said, we don't have a memorial. If y'all approve this to go forward, then we will have something out there that is visual, that you can touch and say that we do have a memorial. Of course, it's on the high ground, and that was the best place to put it out there, on the high ground. Of course, now, there's a lot of things that we discussed out there. You know, the city owns that artillery piece down yonder, and of course, I wanted to put that out there too. I couldn't get them to agree to do that, you know, into this particular, you know, design that they had, but we could certainly put it out there somewhere if, you know, if we agreed to do that. There's also another thing out there that I wanted to put into this area, was that millstone that's laying out there that I had put out there that comes from right over there. And then it's a high tower millstone. And that has a lot to do with all of our history of the mills and things like that. And of course, that's an easy thing to pick it up and put it in a general area of this design. So, you know, I would ask you to please approve this, because of the fact that we need to get on with it. It seems like to me the design's in place, the money's in place, we need to do something. Thank you.
And Gary, for those who were in that meeting, there's a master plan for much more, and that's the reason the budget is 512. But what we're talking about is really this hilltop area, and there's a little bit more detail in this area here. One thing that they've got a picture of here, though, is I like the looks of it, but I don't remember that being the thing that maybe we totally. But it almost doesn't matter so much right now because we're just talking about that hilltop area.
Yes, that's the only thing.
And that's what
without
budget's covered by the $100.
Without budgetary constraints, we can only do the top. But by doing that top piece, that's all that we want. You know, let's get something done. Let's get a memorial out there. Let's get something done. If somebody wants to come along after this and donate some more money or something like that, then maybe we could think about doing some of these other two things. But that's not even included. You know, we decided that let's do the top, let's get something on the ground.
Yeah, and again, there is a master plan. Now, Russell, let me ask you, there was some talk about painting the water tower. And I think we had an idea, but I don't know that there's going to be a little bit of change to what we might.
I believe they put a placeholder in their cost estimate for that. We talked to the people who do the painting on our water tower, and they felt like the level of detail that was architecturally envisioned would not transpose over to art, meaning it's going to be more cluttered. You're not going to get that level of detail, and their recommendation wasn't to go with as presented. Now, that's not to say we can't do something really cool, you know, maybe a different font on the tower, something that looks more historic.
I think we mentioned, you know, just saying, you know, historic Silvertown or something, rather than the flag design at one time that
Right.
looked like it would be a maintenance nightmare.
And the conversation came up because we do have funds appropriated for tank rehab at that particular site. So there's money for painting the tank. So we're going to try to line the two up so that we could have some cohesion.
And I agree with that idea that the thought at first sounds good, but then when you look at putting that much detail into it, it could become a bit of a nightmare. But we can work with that.
In this particular part up there on the top, there will be actual things that was, I guess you'd say relics, that was put in there that could be recognized, you know, from the actual mill out there. And that is the greatest generation, you know, and the mill workers. That's what we have, what we come with. Now, it doesn't have a lot in there about the military. Now, of course, that's the greatest generation in the military. But you know, we got to get something out there. We can't have everything, but let's get something out there on the ground that, you know, the people that's walking around out there, you know, well, I walked in the Greatest Generation Memorial Park, but I couldn't find a memorial, you know. So let's have something out there, and I'd appreciate it if y'all could go ahead and authorize that. I realize that we are just an advisory committee, and sometimes when you get to advising somebody, words are easy, money's hard. So, you know, please accept this and let's go forward. Thank you.
And my only point of clarification, I had the same conversation with Gary today, was, you know, this is a phased concept. If you buy phase 1, or you subsequently buying phase 2 and 3, which comes with additional appropriation of $300,000. And my understanding is that that's not the case for now. Phase 1 is agreeable. However, if in the future council wanted to appropriate money, or if there was, you know, people who wanted to donate additional funds, then potentially phase 2 and 3 could be constructed. But the only thing for consideration tonight is the approval of the concept work for the Hilltop area, which will be phase 1. So if it pleases the council to approve the concept, I would need a subsequent motion for authorization to execute a scope of work with WLA Studios to produce the design documents necessary to put the project out to bid.
We're not asking for approval of the entire plan. We're just asking you to approve this first phase, not the whole entire plan.
And that's true, but part of the funding would pay for the WLA work that they've done, which does kind of include the whole
Correct.
plan, but we're...
Correct. So we're right at budget. Based on the construction estimate, they had a % allocation in there for design fee,
Yeah.
right? And contract documents and so forth was built into this. So
And to me,
it nets out.
the good news about that is we can approve this tonight, and we'll have a plan for future,
Right.
so that we don't have to then, in another 2 years, go back and get it redone. We got a plan for it, but tonight, what we're really approving is this phase 1 of it, really.
So is phase 1 $512,000?
No, ma'am. It's the
Okay.
200. It's the 199,000.
So we've got that money.
Which is coming out of,
Community enterprise fund.
But yeah, this park obviously is in mine and Lakeith's district, and it is one of the most beautiful parks we got. You know, I'm a little biased, it's in my district, and Lakeith as well. And given the historical nature of it being that close to, in Silvertown, I think it's important, to Gary's point and to the committee's point, it's a memorial park. We need to move forward with it and continue to develop it as it was intended to be developed. So I think this is a good step in the right direction. With that, I'll make a motion to approve this.
have a motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Middlebrooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker?
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves?
Yes.
Councilmember Head?
Yes.
See, Gary, you got to talk. That's good. We made sure you got to talk. That's good. But everything's back to normal now, right?
The last item I have on the agenda is it's Ms. Gale's last meeting. And I thought it only befitting that if we embarrassed her a little bit. but more specifically to have her forever enshrined in the city record and minutes that we had her as an agenda item. So with that, I wanted to personally thank you for being here and welcoming me when I come, and for everything that you've done for the city throughout your career. We appreciate it.
Yes, I thank you also. Thank you.
And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the mayor.
All right, we do thank you. This is a bittersweet moment. I mean, when you think of the city of Thomaston, you don't think of all the mayors and the council people. You think of Ms. Gale.
Right. She's the only constant.
That's the only person that's been here. You know, like I said the other day, when we were talking with the tree dedication ceremony, and you know, I talked to the former mayors and what Ms. Gale's meant to them, and I realized I'm the only living mayor in the city of Thomaston ever. So that's. I better knock on wood. I don't even get my car now. But yeah. So you know, we really we're gonna miss you big time. But we lucky we had the retirement ceremony today, and I presented you something there, but I wanted to make sure because we have it on video forever. That it says proclamation for Gail Hammock Day, April 20th, 2021. Whereas the city charter of the city of Thomaston empowers the mayor of said city to issue proclamations, and whereas a lifetime of service is justification for such conveyance, and whereas every so often an employee is so deserving of enshrinement that achievement and gracious dedication should be reduced into writing and entered into the official record of the city of Thomaston. And whereas Gail Hammock has faithfully served the city of Thomaston for 42 years, and whereas she has been given an employee, mentor, constant force, and most importantly, a friend and member of our government family. Now, therefore, as mayor of the city of Thomaston, I do hereby proclaim that April 20th shall be known as Gail Hammock Day. May retirement be blissful, stress-free, and relaxing. You've earned it. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of Thomaston to be affixed, done at the city of Thomaston this 20th day of April in the year of our Lord 2021. So you finally get you a you've written these for many people. Now you got your own. We'd like to present this to you.
And I made her write it.
Actually, there's a bunch of misspelled words, so we know who wrote it.
They're not open.
Let me get a picture of y'all real quick. 1, 2, 3. No photo bomb and Russell.
Thank you. Now you got your time for a speech.
Thank you.
Speech.
Appreciate everyone.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed it. It's been a long journey, but you know, good times are ahead of it.
Absolutely. Enjoy it. You've earned it.
I'll
Enjoy retirement.
miss y'all, but we'll be close. So, you know, I'm not going anywhere. So I'll have to call you up and holler at you.
All right.
Keep Russell straight.
Thank you, Ms. Gale.
Thank you.
I appreciate every one of you.
That's all I got, man.
Okay. All right. Other business. I just want to say Thomaston was featured in the recent MEAG magazine article. It's on our Facebook page. We've put some pictures and a link to the article so you can read. It highlights some of our local industry, highlights some history of some stuff here. It's really, really pretty neat to have that to be focused on us. And also announced that we're going to do Thomaston Night Braves game again, Saturday, May 22nd. It's a 4:10 start, so it's a Saturday afternoon game. Be good to kind of get back, and then we'll have tickets. We'll get some more information out to the public about that. Of course, we do provide all the rec teams of the spring sports and coaches their tickets for that. So that's usually a good event. Get it close to while season's going on. Right. We can get all those people out there for that. So look forward to doing that. Does anybody else have any other business or things they want to say? Last comments, Ms. Gale. It's only 8:13. We got to go to 10 o'clock. Yeah. So.
I wouldn't do that to her. I wouldn't do that to her.
But we do wish you would, Ms. Gale. We wish you would.
One thing I do want to say is I just want to thank Gail, and I think of all the things of her term working with the city, how many things she must have seen over that time. And I will say there have been a lot of times that have been up and down and sideways, and just a lot of history there. And Gail, it was a really stabilizing glue that was there through it all, and just super helpful to every mayor that's been here, every city manager during her term, and every councilman. It was always somebody we could always call, and she would know how to direct us or the information to give us. And her successor is Oasis, and from what we've seen so far, she's cut out of much that same cloth. And so I'm thankful that we have a good person following in your heels. But I just want to thank you for super thankful that we were fortunate enough that you came our way. So thank you so much.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Now you have to sing a song.
I'm still waiting on George.
George Greg's still, I thought he might be here. I was stalling, but he's still not here yet.
Yeah.
Gary's gonna have to sing for you. That's the closest you're gonna get.
I would also say that I've had a long history with Gail. I've been here a long time, been involved a long time. She has guided me, kept me on the straight and narrow to keep me from getting in trouble.
She ought to deserve a big salary for doing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
She's always been good with trouble stealing.
All right. We have no executive session, nothing else.
Yes, sir.
Nothing else. So I hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Oh. Go home.
Got reruns of the half and half.
No, that ain't come back.